In this video, we're going to talk about how you should align your hip, knee, foot. So frequently I'll put in there, keep an eye on hip, knee, foot alignment. So this way you'll go ahead and know what it means, as well as tripod. So I'll talk about tripod foot contact, and this way you'll know what tripod foot contact is. So I think at this point we're all kind of getting clued into the idea that we don't want the knee dipping towards the inside. And that doesn't matter, whether you're doing a single leg squat type movement, or you're doing a lunge kind of movement, or even a bilateral squat and one knee going in. So people now understand, at least have some familiarity with the idea that we want that to line up. But be careful that you're not manipulating the rest of your body in order to get that. So I'll have times where somebody knows that alignment should be there, so they're kind of keying in and making sure, and all of a sudden they've got their whole body twisted over or leaning over and going through some kind of compensation because they're only worried about that knee position. So when I say hip, knee, foot, what I mean is from about the center of our hip, if we drew a line straight down to about the middle of the foot, we want your kneecap to align there. A good way to think of it is with your kneecap, we don't want the kneecap pointing towards the inside. We don't want the kneecap pointing towards the outside. We want your kneecap pointing straight ahead. So hip, knee to the foot. So that's looking at it in one context. Now we're going to look at it along the horizontal line. So if I'm in single leg and I'm going through something like a skater squat, I need to make sure that I'm not getting this big hip drop. So if we think about it in the context of running, initial contact, we'll see people in mid stance and then they've got this huge amount of hip drop going on. So what we should end up with is about 5 degrees to the negative when we're in mid stance, and then in flight we're going to be about 5 degrees to the positive. So we want to avoid getting into bigger ranges of motion than that, and that's either way. We're not trying to hike it way up, but we certainly don't want it dipping way down. So as you go through movements, and if you have the ability to use a mirror or some kind of visual feedback, or simply video yourself and take a peek. If your hands are on your hips, we need to make sure that that's level and then we're not dropping the hip out. So it doesn't matter what the exercise is, pistol, squat, any of those things, we need to make sure that your hip line is nice and level. So we've got level hip line and we have hip, knee, foot. So the last thing I want to talk about is tripod weight distribution on your foot. And that's something we're always trying to maintain. So by that I mean your big toe mound. So this mound or knuckle at the big toe, the little toe mound, and your heel. Those are your tripod contact points. So we're not thinking about digging the big toe in. And I think there may be a little misunderstanding with some of that, where I see people constantly trying to dig the big toe. And it's really the big toe mound, and your toes should just rest on the floor. So we do want contact. As far as that weight distribution, those 3 points: big toe mound, little toe mound, and your heel. So a lot of times as we're going through, maybe it's a bowler exercise, all of a sudden we start rolling that foot to the outside. So all I'll do is put in your notes, keep an eye on tripod foot contact or weight distribution, and that's your key to make sure those 3 points are in contact. Now there are times when I'm going to say a little more on the heel. So when you're going through, whether it's squatting or any of those types of movements, we're going to have that hip hinge. So if I'm looking at an SLRDL, I have 3 points of contact. I'm not going to lose that big toe mound contact point, but I'm going to shift more weight into the heel contact point and then bring myself back up. So to get that weight distributed to your heel, you're going to have to kick the hips back. Or if you're hinging properly through the hip, you're going to get that weight shifting back a little bit. The key is don't lose the big toe mound contact point, but you're going to distribute more weight through the heel. That's going to keep it so that we're not digging into the quad and the knee quite as much, and make sure that we're moving properly to load into the glute and then bring the hamstring in there as well. So keep in mind, hip, knee, foot simply means from the hip to the center of your foot, your knee falls within that line. A level pelvis, we want to make sure that the hip is not dropping out, so we want the waistline parallel to the floor. And then tripod weight distribution, big toe mound, little toe mound, and your heel. Keep all 3 points in contact as you go through your exercises.